Welcome back to the Mindsets Podcast. I'm joined here by Jason for another episode. We're going to talk about quite a few different things today, but to kick us off, do you want to give us a little introduction to who you are?
Yeah, as you already said, I'm Jason. I'm 25. I work in marketing and the insurance industry. Very boring, I know, but I'm here today to talk about all things wellbeing. Having been on my own journey, I want to sort of share a bit of my knowledge. Outside of that, I'm a huge lover of sports. Honestly, can't think of a year since I was about 4 that I haven't played them. I just sort of mentioned I'm a big contact sport advocate, big gym advocate. And honestly, I think I'm just generally a normal bloke, but I want to share my story.
I like it. Cool. So let's start at the beginning then.
Yeah.
Have you always been into sport, or was it not the sort of thing you were interested in?
I genuinely cannot, bar COVID, I cannot think of a single year of my life where I've not played some form of sport or multiple sports. I also can't think of many sports I haven't tried at some point. From when I was in school, when you're younger, it's the obvious ones, your football, your rugby, your swimming, your hockey. And I sort of started branching out, did random ones. I did table tennis for a while, done water polo, badminton. Honestly, I can't think of
any sports. Did you do all of those at school?
Yeah. So everything was all at school.
Where did you go to school? Because my school did not have some of those.
So I went to a school in a small market town near Peterborough called Oundle School. Okay. Just a very posh private boarding school, 6 days a week, which was not the nice when you start, but then when you go into uni, you're actually like, oh, if I can do 6 days a week, uni is going to be a breeze. So yeah, it wasn't your standard schooling experience. It was, slightly roguer things like, doing water polo. That's not, sort of typical thing to go and play. And I think that was off the background of, I did swimming from a very young age. I think I started swimming probably around about 3 or 4. And that wasn't when I was doing competitive. I probably started competitively I'd say about 7. And then just sort of progressed from there. And I fell out of love with the actual swimming side of it, switched to water polo. But then, I had all my other sports on the background. I did rugby from a young age, carried that on all throughout, and then sort of stopped about, I think it was 17, 18. Football I was never very good at, but just loved playing it. Just don't rely on me to play competitive football, just there for a fun kickabout. Did hockey for a bit. As I said, did badminton for a bit, did a bit of table tennis. I even did shooting for a little bit.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
Kind of mucked in with everything. And did you say this was like boarding school?
Yeah, so it was boarding school. I was a day pupil there. So I lived in the actual town of Oundle itself. Lovely little market town, just outside Peterborough. Not many people know where it is. Not many people even know where Peterborough is. Not that you need to. Cause
I was going to say, I have been there. No shade on anyone from Peterborough, but I haven't met any people that brag about coming from Peterborough, really.
I am very open in, am I allowed to swear on here?
Yeah, 100%.
I'm very open in saying that Peterborough is a complete shithole. We were voted worst city to live in the UK 3 years running.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. We actually got overtaken a couple of years ago by Bradford. So can't really brag about that even anymore. But yeah, it's I wouldn't brag about being from Peterborough. I'm very proud of it. I'm a Peterborough United football fan, which is just pain in itself. But, you're right. Nobody brags about being from Peterborough.
So when you were going to boarding school then, you said 6 days a week. Sounds like you did quite a lot of sport. I think the thing with boarding school, and I mentioned this with a previous guest, is I wondered if he found it quite lonely. And I don't think he thought it was lonely because he was surrounded by people. But he also wasn't an only child or anything like that. I mean, even though you were coming home, you're doing 6 days a week in kind of education. Is that lonely, or was it just nice seeing your friends all the time?
I think it was very lonely when you got home. 6 days a week doesn't allow you to have much of a social life outside of schooling. And being a day pupil, your mates in your house are quite spread around the area. You see them in school, but Saturday evening, Sunday, you don't really get that. And I think as well, because I was spending a lot of time between my dad's house in Peterborough and my mum's house in Oundle, it was very hard to have any continuity or stability. So I couldn't really make plans. And when I went back to my dad's, I just didn't really have any what I'd call home friends. And I think still now, I look back at my childhood and I don't really have any home friends. And it sounds really sad, but that's just the reality of how it was growing up as an only child, divorced parents, heavy schooling schedule. It was difficult. So yeah, it was pretty lonely, but got through it.
How old were you Well, yeah. How old were you when your parents split?
Pretty much all I've ever known, really. So they split when I was, I think, 4 or 5. And yeah, it's all I ever knew. I don't really have any I've got a couple of holiday memories from when they were together, but that it's always just been the two paths.
It's similar. It's similar to me, and because my parents split when I was, I think, 5 or 6 years old, and it was a bit of a weird thing at first. I didn't really understand it. I think because I was so young, I didn't really. It kind of, because it was all you've ever known when you look back. Like it probably wasn't as impactful as if I'd been a couple of years older.
Yeah,
because I didn't really appreciate what that was. And then the initial thing, and I still remember this. This is really bad, by the way. I remember my parents sitting me and my sister down on the sofa and telling us. And I remember my sister being a little bit upset because she's older than me. And then me going, does this mean I get 2 birthday presents or 2 Christmas
we all
presents?
think it.
And I mean, do you know what? If anyone's going through that right now, it does actually mean that. So there's a positive twist. You do get that. But obviously, it was quite a weird alien time. For my family, my dad moved out, and we stayed in the house with my mum. Yeah, we went in between as well. And I think one of the things, from my opinion, it'll be interesting to see if you had the same experience, is it's very strange packing a bag to go to a home. Because, like, you don't really pack a bag to go home unless you're coming home from holiday.
Yeah.
But you're actually just between houses.
Yeah, I'm incredibly good at living out my bag. I've done it as long as I can remember. I mean, you know, sort of what I was saying with the lack of stability was in every sense. And I know sort of what you said in terms of because we were so young, it maybe didn't impact us if we were, let's say, 11, 12, 13. I think it doesn't impact you with the initial trauma as much, but I think it impacts you in like a much larger picture. And it is little things like that, just packing to go, that's not normal. And I think I got so used to just doing it. It's like, oh, this weekend I'm with dad, got to pack up. And then like when you get there, because you're there for a weekend, and it's like, well, it's pointless unpacking, so I'm just going to live out of the bag. Go back home, oh, I'm going there in another week, like I may as well like live out of this bag for now, and then maybe pack a few extra bits and go. So yeah, it's still weird. I still do it now. Like I'm going back to my dad's in a couple of weekends, going to pack a bag to go back to my house. It's such a weird dynamic, but
Yeah.
you get used to it. Get very good at packing a bag.
Well, that's for sure. Like, yeah, I can pack into a rucksack and be away for a week if I need to. But then how did this affect things when you started to grow up, go through secondary school, and then eventually to uni? You know, you start to get a more stable form of accommodation because you live in a place, sort of, you are living by yourself, but
Yeah.
with friends and that sort of thing. Did you adjust to that quite easily because you were so used to kind of not being so settled?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it was being at uni and like the private accommodation were the closest I'd had to a home setting, because it was the longest amount of time I'd spent prolonged at one building, like staying at one place, unpacking your bag, and actually having stuff in a wardrobe is really quite like, you know, I think when I lived at my mum's, which was in Oundle, like I had more stuff unpacked there because I was typically like, you know, just close to school, I was there more often. And then being at uni was a very quick adjustment for me because I was just, as you say, I was used to it. And it was the first time actually, you know, spending more than I'd say 2-3 weeks at one place. So yeah, I mean, again, like thinking about it in my head, it sounds quite sad saying that was my first idea of a proper home, but it just was, and that's how it was for me. It was normal to me.
When you went to uni, which was University of Birmingham, what was your driver for going to Birmingham?
Genuinely, partly American football. So I remember an open day I did there back in, God, it would have been 2016, I reckon. And I think this was a year after they just won the national championship. Because I actually remember it, like the open day, they had like a table set up, they had the trophy on it. And I remember speaking to the guys, and I just got into American football at this point. A couple of mates at school, they'd got me into American football, and unfortunately they support the Buffalo Bills, so I ended up supporting the Buffalo Bills, which has just been pain ever since. Same with Peterborough. And yeah, I love the campus as well. The whole campus setup is such a, I still think it is the best looking university in this country.
Wrong.
There we go, Loughborough.
Yeah, Loughborough's there.
You can take your soulless Loughborough. I'll take Old Joe any day. But yeah, it was the campus setup. It was the facilities they had there. They were just building a new sports hall. The American football, which is then what ended up going to play, and sort of how we end up knowing each other as well. And yeah, it's just, I think, you know, when you just, you know, it's so cliche, but you know when you know. And I remember leaving that open day, having done loads of others, like, that's where I want to go. That is where I want to go. Don't know what I want to do that yet. I think originally I was going to do psychology. Thank God I didn't. I'd been useless. But no, then I ended up doing business management and then staying there for next year doing master marketing. So wouldn't change it. And it still is the best looking uni.
Now, did the whole sort of gym and everything, which I'm aware of now, and we'll move into it, is a big part of your life. Did you discover that before you went to university through school, or did that kind of come into its own at university?
Yeah, so I think it came into its own a bit more at university. I discovered it in school. I think it was around about lower sixth, and straight away the reason I gymmed was for my mental health.
Okay, so you knew that very early on.
Yeah, so it is. I think I sort of discovered it early on. Initially I went because I was being bullied at school. And I was a slightly larger kid, shall we say? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm still, I'm no like lean athlete now. I've always been a lover of food, but like back then I was a lover of food and didn't quite have the exercise to go with it.
Yeah.
So I was a bit of a chunkier kid, and off the back of that, kids are kids. You're gonna pick on people for whatever you can. Really.
What sort of bullying was it? Was it online or was it more like in person?
It was more in person. And there was a little bit of racism mixed in as well, because I mean it's a horrible thing, but private schools are quite elitist, and I think that a lot of people get away with the more casual side of racism. So I started going to the gym for the simple reason of losing weight and also like just trying to get a bit bigger so I could kind of take care of myself. And I've never been a physical altercation person, but I was like, if push comes to shove and I want to be able to take care of myself. And then as I started going, I was like, oh, actually, I feel better within myself for going. Because I think this is also around about the start of when I started having mental health problems, and when I started recognizing them as well. So I think it all kind of meshed in together at that point. And then when I went to university, that's when I was like, okay, right, how do I train properly?
Okay, and you obviously said that you became aware. What made you aware?
I think it was a conversation with my dad. He was very open with me. He said that he'd struggled when he was younger, but there was a lot of periods where I was skipping school, or like I say skipping school, I was feigning illnesses to avoid going to school. I didn't want to see certain people there. The bullying was obviously tied into this. And then I think my dad recognized something was up. He had a conversation with me and like he asked me all these questions. I think there was one that I remember like sort of specifically was he's like, what does it you feel? I was like, well, it's not really sadness. I just feel numb. I just feel like there is just such a numbness to my like existence right now. So bless him, he took me to the GP. We had that conversation, and I mean, I think that I still remember that conversation to this day with, I think how badly the doctor handled it, because basically handed me a questionnaire. You circle all these numbers, you say how you feel, and he just, he then takes the questionnaire, he looks at it, and he just goes, "Yep, you've got depression." I'm like, "What do you mean? Yeah, I've got depression." Like, expand, elaborate, and it was just as simple as that. He was like, "We're going to put you on this medication." So I went on citalopram. Put me on that, put me on like 5 milligrams of citalopram. I think by the time I finished, I was on like 30. So
wow, okay.
Didn't dose me right at the start. But yeah, I think that was just a very weird sort of route into it. Like having that really nice, nurturing conversation with my dad to then being told very coldly, yeah, you've got mental illness. It just wasn't handled very well on that part. But, I had really good support from my family. So that did help.
I mean, how old were you when that happened?
I think I was about 17.
It's quite young,
yeah,
to be diagnosed with depression. Actually,
yeah. I think I was either at the back end of 16 or at the start of 17.
And did you stay on those drugs right through to uni, or did you come off?
So I stayed on them until my gap year, like start my gap year. So I stayed on them, gradually increased the dosage, and at the same time, the school was quite good. I had counselling, which was through the school. They had their own system of counsellors. I mean, the benefit of going to private schools, you do have access to these facilities and these people. So that was good. And then stayed on them until I think about the beginning of my gap year. I thought I was all right. I was like, oh, I feel great. Like I can come off these, and very stupidly. And anybody, if you are on antidepressants and you are thinking about coming off them, do not do this. Do not come off them cold turkey, because it's the worst thing you can do to yourself. You're taking your body from this, like sort of high and like, although it's a high to you, it could be normal to somebody else, but then you're just taking that away and you plummet. And what you should do is you should like ease off your dosage and gradually come back down to either where you started or just come back down to like a 0 and then, try and continue life without any medication.
Okay. And so then was the gap year because you'd always wanted to do a gap year, or is it kind of just to find yourself?
No. Complete impromptu gap year of messing up my A levels. And at the time I was down to psychology. My grades meant I was going to be going to Oxford Brookes, and I was fine with it at the time. I was like, oh, cool, psychology, Oxford Brookes, all sounds good. And then I remember I was going on holiday with a few mates, and I was sat in the airport lounge and just had this sudden epiphany. I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to do psychology. Don't want to go to Oxford Brookes. Like, I don't want to do any of this. And sat right there. And then I withdrew all my UCAS application. I remember phoning up my mum and dad to tell them, and I was like, I'm not going to uni next year. And it was the initial reaction was like, what do you mean you're not going to uni next year? Like, we planned everything to go for you to go to uni. And it was a bit of a funny one. I just decided there and then, I was like, I'm going to take a year out. I'm going to work. I'm going to study. I'm going to resit some of my exams, get the grades I want, and I'm going to go to Birmingham. And that's what I did.
Nice. Well, nicely done. It happened. So then obviously after the gap year, you go to uni. We've obviously spoken about you were pulled in a little bit by American football and that sort of thing. But university is a bit of a weird place because, there's a lot of socializing. There's some studying. And then, for someone that's sporty, there's sport on the side of that. And it's really a case of how you juggle all three, if you can. How did the juggling of those three affect your mental health?
I think by always keeping busy, it kind of allows me to not dwell on things. And I think that did work at the start. And, I had this period where after I'd come off the medication the wrong way, I did it the right way. And at this point, I'm medication-free, counselling, not going on, not doing anything. And then it was May of my first year of uni, and everything just out of nowhere just crashed and burned. And I think it was, in hindsight, it started earlier than this. There were early warning signs, which now I really easily recognise. I know, hey, buddy, your mental health's going downhill a bit, which I've done recently, actually. And you pick up on these little things, but at the time I was completely unaware. So then that was when I first started therapy. So counselling and therapy are slightly different. So this time around I was having CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy. And that sort of helped me manage the juggling a bit more, because I think before I was trying to juggle everything. I was trying to study hard. I was trying to do everything I could for my sports, everything I could for my gym. And then I was also trying to do all the socialising, all the going out. And you can't do that. You just can't. Like, as much as you think when you're young, I'm invincible, I've got all the energy, I can do what I want. Something's got to give. And unfortunately, at the time, the thing that did give was my mental health. So I didn't do a very good job of juggling, to simply answer your question. But, better at it now, hopefully.
And did you continue with therapy all the way through university, or did it come and go?
On and off. So I went for a period from then until probably like near enough the start of second year, just before COVID hit. Then obviously COVID happened. The whole world just basically went up in smoke for a few months. Came back to uni, I think it was the end of second year, start of third year. And I sort of started to pick up therapy again because, everything was weird. Like, didn't really know what was going on in my life, and I just needed that bit of guidance. And I was really, really fortunate that through my mum's work with her health plan, she had Bupa, which then also gave her access to her children, i.e. me. So I was really fortunate to have that private therapy there, and that went on and off for a little bit. Stopped that some point in third year, couldn't tell you when, and then started therapy again in fourth year. I think the last time I had therapy was about just over a year ago, last January, and I'm going again on Monday, first time in a year and a bit.
Now, I want to ask you about what drew you back into going into therapy again on Monday, which, for those wondering, is literally a couple of days from now. But I'm aware that you've had a few challenges along the way in the last few years. One of the most notable ones is a case of grievance.
Yeah.
And you went through quite a severe case of grievance.
Yeah.
We're obviously at the age now, where it becomes more typical to lose someone in your family.
Yeah.
It's sometimes, and I had it. I lost a grandparent when I was very young. Again, probably too young to really recognize or deal with the emotions of that. But then it becomes less common until you're sort of in your 20s to 30s for you to lose someone. And I'm aware that that first person can be pretty hard hitting, but you didn't just have one person.
No. So, similar to you, I'd had other losses, and when you're younger, that it's still shit. Doesn't quite hit the same. And it was during my master's year, so I had a lot going on then. Doing a master's is no easy thing in itself. I was also president of American football at the time. That was a task in of itself, and it was November. And initially, my granddad died. Well, it was my stepdad's dad, but he was always a granddad to me. Known him from when I was 5 or 6. So he passed on the Tuesday, and then on the Sunday, November 28th, my younger cousin died. He was 21 in a car crash, and I still remember that call. I'll always remember that. And then 4 days after that, my nan passed as well. So a 9-day period of like 3 really close family members just gone. And it really, really sucked. It's just like, I don't know how else to put it. I think, when you go into grief, it's a weird enough state for the body as it is, but to go through 3 consecutive bouts of grief in such a short period of time, it almost flips it round completely. Like, I was in such a bad state of grief and really upset, and then it got to the point where after my nan's death, I was like, is this a joke? Like, it just seemed like it was so cruel for life to inflict this on someone. Like, why? Like, why now? Why in such a short period of time? Why me? And I think like the hardest one was my cousin. Seeing someone that's younger than you that you're very close with. I always find it difficult to talk about. As you can see, I'm getting a bit emotional, but
okay.
it was just he was probably my closest family member. Like, any family event, me and him were we're either there talking, we're there messing around, we're there annoying people. And it was really weird going to family events after that, just not having him there. That grief period was really, really horrible, but I actually kind of turned it around quite quickly. Went home for about, I think, week and a half, and then just saddled up and went back to uni, and was like, life's got to go on.
It's quite a difficult thing to do. I mean, I have got a relationship with my cousin as well. He's an only child. I obviously said that I've got my older sister. We get along great now. We were very different when we were younger. And my cousin was always very much a bit more of a little brother to me. Yeah. He still is now. I love seeing him. He lives in London. And I can only imagine what that must have been like. But I can also understand that, you're in a very, very tough place. You've lost a fair few family members. And I wonder if this almost goes back to being that numb younger kid again, where you are having so much infliction through your bullying and that sort of thing, where you said to your dad, like, I just feel numb, like bad stuff keeps happening. And you maybe turned it around through an element of kind of being a bit numb to it, which is a horrible thing because you obviously had to go through those emotions, but at the same time you kind of locked them away a little bit. Yeah,
and I think I definitely suppressed it quite heavily at the start. It was almost a coping mechanism of, and it's a really bad coping mechanism. It's not great, but it's what I do now, and I just say, hey, you just got to keep moving forward. Yeah, you can't stop. As shit as life may be, whatever's going on with you, that the sun's still going to set, still going to rise the next day. Everybody else's life's going to carry on. Like, you can't just stop. And I don't think I dealt with it properly at the time. I did unpack it further along, but there was just so much to it. I think it was the shock and awe factor. My granddad, he'd been ill. My nan had been ill. Like, they were expecting. I think actually when my nan went, because she'd been on death's door for quite a while, and it was almost like a sense of relief.
I was going to say, I wonder if that.
So it was almost like, I'm kind of thankful that she's now got that release. She's no longer in pain, no longer suffering. Sorry.
It's okay. I think as well, obviously this period of time, like you said, you're doing your masters and you're being president of American Football Club. There's a lot of self pressure that you've got, because you kind of need to feel like you have to uphold everyone. And while everyone will say to you, oh, it's fine, don't worry about it, you don't want it to be that way. You want to carry on as normal. You want to still be that person, but you kind of can't. And everyone appreciates that, but just because everyone appreciates it doesn't mean that you're going to let yourself off. So were you still talking to a therapist at this time? Or?
Yeah, so I think this is what I was still talking to him through this period, and I started having more regular meetings. Like, it's all depending on how I'm doing, is how long we stretch the meetings out for. Oops, sorry. And I was speaking to him quite regularly because I just needed to, and I needed somebody that was outside of this bubble of suffering to talk to, because I couldn't talk to my mum. She's just lost a nephew. I couldn't talk to somebody else. Like, everybody had, my mum's just lost her mum. My stepdad just lost his dad. It's a nephew that's lost. And, at the same time, my mum has just sort of finished her second round of having cancer as well. So it was a lot going on at once. Like, I think she was in remission at this point. She didn't quite have the all clear, which she might have done. I can't quite remember, but she's on the back end of that. And I didn't really know who to turn to. And I know I'm a big advocate for people talking. I will drop everything to have a friend talk to me, but I didn't want to inflict that on one of my friends. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to be like, hey, like, I basically need to trauma dump on you. So that's where the therapy comes in, and it is the best thing that ever happened to me, because I don't know where I'd be in life without having him support me, talk to me. And, I can tell when, obviously it is a business relationship at the end of the day. He is earning money from talking to me, and I'm essentially paying it. But I could tell genuinely when I talk to him that he cares I do well. So I keep I'm trying to.
No, it's all good. Well, this comes to a T-shirt that you're wearing right now. So again, for people watching, do you want to read out what's on your T-shirt?
Just true men need to talk, and I know it says true men need to talk. This goes for anybody, wherever you may be. But I think it specifically aligns with men because, there is a stigma around men and mental health. And I know that as a society, we've moved so far forward in that, but I still think there is an element of not wanting to talk. I think part of that is self-inflicted. As I was saying, I didn't want to put that burden on my friends. I think there's less societal pressure now to keep it all bottled up and in, but I still think there's an internal pressure as men that we feel like, hey, I need to soldier on, I need to be the provider, the caregiver, I need to be that person that's really got their shit together. So yeah, true men need to talk. Like, whether you're talking to a friend, a family member, a therapist, whoever it may be, just don't keep it bottled up because you think you may be a burden. You're not. Like, it's really difficult to initially get it out, but once you do get it out, you'll have moments like this where I'm really trying not to cry. I'm really, really trying not to cry because I don't like crying. It's not I don't like crying because it's a sign of weakness. It just, I get really puffy eyes and I look shit.
There's only there's editing that can be done. I don't know. My editing of that kind of thing hasn't gone that far yet. But what I did want to tie into this is it's the raw factor, right? We try and cover things up. With editing, you do try and edit things out, and with Instagram, I'm very caught on to social media in general, not just Instagram, but it's very difficult because people are posting, the best things that happen in their life, and there are some people out there that say it's always good to remember that because life isn't that good, and these people are actually really sad and stuff like that. But I also have the aspect of, well, you wouldn't necessarily always want to capture the bad things, and you want to capture the good things because they're the memories you want to have.
Yeah.
And so I think social media has massive positives and massive negatives. And this kind of ties into the fact that, around university time, you decided to start your well-being account.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was partly a way of sharing without necessarily burdening someone potentially. But you decided to do sort of daily posts on how things were going. Very raw, very honest. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you got into that?
Yeah, so I mean, initially it started out, I remember the first name I had for it was Atlas_16. So it relates to my tattoo, which is Atlas Greek Titan. That is also related to mental health. I got it when I was 18 because I always used to say to my counsellor, feels like the weight of the world's on my shoulders. So that was the first name of the account. It was very much just a gym account. It was like, just before lockdown all started, I started like taking gym a bit more seriously. I was like, hey, I really want to document this. And then as we went into lockdown, I noticed that there was a collective feeling of just this negative air. Don't know what else to call it. And I think it was May of lockdown one, so May 2020. And that was probably, I think that was my first mental health post. And I just decided to be open and honest about how shit I was feeling. And I think how shit a lot of people were feeling. I think it was a cathartic process for me to put it all down in words and just push it out there into the world and be like, maybe see how this is received. And I think for me as well, it was almost, I'm being that person that I wanted to have when I was growing up. God, if I'd had somebody like that when I was growing up, being like, oh, it is okay to talk about how you're feeling. It is okay to be like, hey, I'm doing really crap right now. And I wanted to be that person. And especially in a time period when we couldn't see our loved ones, we couldn't do the normal things. It was nice to be a voice that could be recognized. And I think when I put that first post out, I never imagined that I was going to keep posting and basically just dumping my life story on people, because I think as I went into it, I got more and more open, and I was just very honest about how I'm feeling, what I think, the way my brain works, because I think, although we all think, I think when things are going bad, if you think, hey, why me? Is it just me that feels this way? And no, it's not just you. It's such a wider thing than that. So many thousands, millions of people probably feel your way, but you feel so isolated. And so I just wanted to break free of that isolation, let somebody else out there know, like, hey, you're not alone in whatever struggles you're going through. So start posting on that. Initially, it was just a lot of me posting about how I'm feeling when I'm feeling down. I noticed that when I was feeling down, I was posting more on it than when I was feeling happy. And then as I sort of breached a bit more into this happiness phase, I started to post a few more like tips that have helped me. So one thing that sort of developed more as I got older was a lot more of the anxiety, along with the depression. So I started to post a couple of bits about like, how I deal with anxiety. And then I did a bit of research occasionally about like how the professionals would be like, oh, here's how you should deal with anxiety. And I read a lot of it. I was like, that doesn't work. So, I would pick apart little bits about this and I'd say, hey, they say you're meant to do this. It might work for you, but hasn't worked for me. Have you thought about trying this? And just a little post like that. And it was really well received. I remember being at university and having people I didn't know, I genuinely did not know them from Adam. And they would come up to me on nights. I'm like, hey, I've seen your post on this. I think it's really great you're doing it. Like, thank you. It's helped me be more open. It was just little bits like that. I was like, that is why I'm doing this. And that is why I'll continue doing this. He says, having not posted.
Here we go. So this is a big question. There was a lot of stuff that happened. You were having therapy, you were doing all of this, you were big on gym and improving and that sort of thing. And then, and I don't know if this is because you moved to London and got an adult job, went to big school, but you stopped posting.
Yeah.
And you stopped going to therapy.
Yeah. So I don't know if they were directly correlated. I think I stopped posting partly because, now I work in marketing and I do a lot of social media. Now looking back, I'm like, those are really bad tactics because I posted so much on all these posts. I was using up content. Obviously, I was never doing it from a content approach, so that's why I didn't think about it that way. But I was like, well, I've spoken about most things I want to speak about. Why would I keep posting? But then obviously now that I know that having that sort of constant presence and just that reminder of somebody can be quite important. And I kind of stopped posting just because I was feeling better in myself. And even when I wasn't feeling better in myself, I was just dealing with it. I could just get through these like small bouts of depression I'd have. Like I have my coping mechanisms, my healthy coping mechanisms now. And obviously not having the therapy, I didn't have those little golden nuggets of information I could dispel. Because I think the other thing that I realized is that I was really fortunate to have therapy and have private therapy. There are thousands of people out there on NHS waiting lists that are in dire need of information and help, and they don't have access to it. They're on 6-month waiting lists for something that you need sorting right now. When you need therapy, you don't need it in 6 months. You need it next week. You need it this day. And I think by being fortunate enough to have access to that information, I wanted to try and put it out there. So I stopped posting as much. I've chucked out a couple of posts here and there. I think the couple of posts I've chucked out have been when I've been like really, really down and like I need to put something out there. And that was very much a kind of almost like a selfish cathartic process. And yeah, it did help people. I've had people messaging off the back of them, be like, oh, it's been really great. But I'll be very honest. I'll be, like brutally honest. I was doing that for myself at the time. It wasn't like when I started posting, which was for other people. So things will change, hopefully.
Well, I think something that you don't need to necessarily do things for other people. It was obviously your account, and when I was reading through some of your posts, because it was kind of quite a consistent thing, like you said, you were. I mean, if we're looking at it from a content creator's perspective, yeah, you could be overusing content, but I don't think you were never doing anything like that, and I think that in itself is a little bit of an interesting perspective to take on posting stuff and emotions, but. It almost was acting, well, for me, the way that I was receiving it was a journal.
Yeah.
And it was your way of doing a journal post. And I think for a journal that's open and a bit like a blog for other people to pay attention to, you don't need to do every post for everyone else, and you don't need to do every post for you, but there should be a balance of that.
Yeah.
And I think when I'm putting content from the podcast, because ultimately podcast is trying to share some different perspectives, different information, when I'm putting something out there, it's not necessarily because I think you guys are going to love it. I think it's because it's something that I found useful. And if I found it useful, I hope other people do. And I don't want to tailor just to what I think everyone else likes, because then I won't know if anyone else likes it. If I know that I can put it out there, and this is advice I got from someone else, if I put something out there that I like, then I know that I like it. At least one person likes it.
Yeah.
Whereas if no one else likes it, and am I still okay with the fact that I like it? Yeah. If I put something out there for everyone else to like, but I don't really like it, I don't know if they're actually going to like it, but I know that I don't. So it's not mine. Like it's not really true to me.
Yeah, you're not being true to yourself.
Exactly. And I think for people to share the right message about the way that they're feeling, how are you feeling? Like that's what the posting should be. And you talking about going back in and starting it again, I think you should have that balance of, it is okay to do it for yourself. And ultimately people might get something from that, because these people are going to find the truth in what you're posting that can relate to them and go with that. Whereas if you try and tailor your post for what someone else is feeling, like chances are you're going to miss.
Yeah.
And that's fact. So I think I want you to get back into posting, and we've spoken about that, because I think for you, it will bring so much benefit, as well as it will bring anyone else that's listening to this and wants to follow along, or anyone that's already joined in with it. Because as you've said, and as your t-shirt says, people need to talk.
Yeah.
And when you get to a point where you can't talk, that's difficult. So in terms of changing up from the therapy and posting, obviously we're coming back towards doing both of those now. But in the meantime, you joined a rather expensive gym, which may have been slightly to do with, dealing with the mentals and that sort of thing, but also the physicals, because you don't play American football anymore. You've kind of stepped away from that, and you go to Third Space, London City, which, by the way, I had the pleasure of joining you in. You very kindly invited me along as a guest. Fuck me, is it nice, right? It is really nice. I currently use Pure Gym. No shade on Pure Gym. Everything weighs the same as it does in Third Space. But you have a pool, you have a sauna, you have fancy soaps, towels, everything like that. How much is it a month, if you don't mind me asking?
It went up in the new year.
Oh, no. Okay, go on.
I mean, it went up by £10, but it's £210 a month.
£210 a month, which is a lot of money, right? For anyone. I don't care if you're really mega rich, if you're on the lower end of the pay scale, that is a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, to combo that as well, I've also still got the gym membership as well for back home. So
okay.
I think overall each month it's like $240 on gyms. But
for you, that's justifiable.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember when I first started going there, it was very much on a whim. Like, it's right by my office, and where my favorite lunch spot was, I was walking past it like most days, and you just look in, and you're like, that looks really quite nice in there. And then I think one day I was just leaving work, I was like, I'm just gonna pop my head in and just ask if I can have a quick tour. So I had a quick look around. They give you like a guided tour, so one of their sales reps essentially takes you through. And I realized that as I was walking around, I was like, gym itself, really nice. Location, incredibly convenient. Everything you can think of is taken care of there, from your, if you want to shave in the morning, they've got stuff there for that. Deodorants, ironing boards, like all these little things. But it was when I was actually talking to the sales, I got completely sold. Like he did an incredible job because I still remember this line he gave to me. He said to me, he's like, you know what? Some people are into their cars, so they spend a lot of money on their cars. Some people are into their fine dining, they go out for all these fancy meals, and some people are really into their health and fitness, and so they'll invest in their health and fitness. I'm like, that's me. I'm that person. I really like my health and fitness. And so yeah, so I literally joined up like 3 days later, and I've kept at it. It's a lot of money's gone into it, but it's an incredible gym, and for me, it's just a place I can go and just kind of block everything else out. I've been using it more frequently recently for like my mornings for work. So I have, people that have known me for a long time, I do not get up early. At uni, I was a 11 a.m. midday guy. And this gym has got me to a person where I'm waking up at 6 a.m. voluntarily, going into the gym before work, getting a whole workout in, then going for a sauna, going for a swim, getting ready, then going to the office, doing a whole day of work, just because of how nice it is and that feeling it gives me of, is the gym itself worth 200 or 210 pounds? No. Is it in a holistic sense worth that through what it gives you? And I mean, also, there are loads of class involved. If you're someone who likes classes, it actually probably is worth it financially, just through like the yoga and the combat stuff they do. But it's just the way it makes me feel and how happy it makes me. I'd say it's worth it.
Nice. Cool. Well, I mean, anyone that's thought about it, maybe there's a different light. You've just had girl math approach, maybe, to allowing that.
When I first went, I was breaking down like, if I do this amount of classes, and then since then I've done about 4 classes, all of them hot yoga. But also, if anybody from Third Space is listening, please sponsor me.
Yeah, yeah, and likewise, we'll take one as well.
Yeah, we'll happily sort it.
Cool. I want to move on to some listener questions. I do have a couple more personal questions, but we'll come back to them. So listener questions. For anyone that's listening to this for the first time and you don't know, if you're following on the social media, typically Instagram, in the days leading up to having a guest on, I like to post a little bit of information about that guest, so you guys can ask some questions, and then you have the opportunity to hear your question get answered. So I've had 3 lovely people message in.
Okay.
First person is Jim. Okay, I think you know Jim.
Yes, I do know Jim.
I know Jim as James, which he loves.
Oh, you know James. I don't. Jim or Jimmy.
He hates. So he says that, you're very open about your mental health today. Have you always been this way?
No. I think, actually, I'm going to solidly say no, and I'm going to bring up a really good story that ties into this. When I was first suffering, and I use the term suffering because it is, a lot of people say, oh, I'm living with mental health problems. And no, you do suffer. It is really, really shit at times. Let's not sugarcoat it and try and lie to people. Like it is shit. When I was first suffering, I was at school. I was having these counselling sessions, and just a bit of background, the way that Oundle is, it's spread out across this market town. So, you could be walking like 10, 15 minutes between lessons. And where my house was, so my day house, and where the counselling sessions were, there was a good like 15-minute walk up to it. And obviously I'm disappearing for like, an hour session, 15 minutes, like an hour and a half a day. And everybody knows where everybody is at all times pretty much. And I was lying. I was lying about where I was going. I wasn't telling people I was going to a counselling session. I'd make up whatever I could. My house in that direction. Sometimes I'd say, oh, I'm going home for a bit, just because you could. You weren't meant to, but you just could. Sometimes I'd say, oh, I've injured my ankle, because it's also the same place that we had like the infirmary and physio. So I could say like, oh, ankle injury, I've, going to get physio. And I lied about this for probably a good 2-3 months, even to my best mates. Like even to the people you're meant to trust the most, I was lying to them. And this sort of came up in the counselling, and she asked me, why are you not being honest? And I said it's because I didn't want to appear weak. And that is quite possibly one of the dumbest things I've ever said. And I've said a lot of dumb stuff. Because honestly, talking about it is probably the strongest thing you can do. It is so far removed from being weak. To be able to be open, to be raw, to completely expose all your vulnerability to somebody is so strong and also so necessary. So I was hiding it for quite a while, and then I started to be open because I remember there was a teacher at the school and he proposed opening something called the Mental Health Forum. And I was one of the founding peoples of this. And as I was starting to go to that, and I met a few other people, and before I joined this, you didn't know the other students that were joining, and I saw people there. I was like, wow, I would have never known that you were struggling. And they said the same thing to me. They were like, would have never known you were struggling. And from then onwards, I was like, you know what, I'm going to be open. So when I was going to my counselling, I was like, I'm going to counselling. And then the same happened when I was at uni. When I was at uni, I need time to go up to my room, or like if I was heading in to like go and have my therapy, I'd say, oh, guys, I'm off to my therapy. I'll catch you in a couple of hours. So no, is the short answer, Jim. I was not always open with it, and it is a difficult thing to be open with, but it's a very beneficial thing to be open with. And I think if I could give you any sentence about this, it is don't see it as a weakness to be open. See it purely as the strongest thing you can do.
Amazing message, and very well answered. Moving on, I have a very different, and this is the nature of listener questions. It's a very different tone, so I appreciate you getting into that.
Yeah,
I'd
like something a bit less serious.
So here we are then. This is also anonymous, so this person clearly didn't want to break up the tone and be known for it. But
okay.
The question is, what is your current best gym playlist or song?
Oh, best gym song. Oh, see, this changes so regularly because I'll go through like each sort of like couple of months, I completely change up my music taste. So like my Spotify playlist, if anybody likes organized Spotify playlists, just avoid my profile. Best music at the moment for me, a lot of Fred again. But then like
Solid.
I'll have a playlist that has Fred again, that then switches to 50 Cent, that then switches to Skepta, that you know, it sort of like goes over the shop. If I was to have one gym song right now, I'd say Leave Me Alone by Fred again, the Near Archives remix, or Badadan.
Jesus, I don't think I could listen to that while I was in the gym.
Oh,
my heart rate would go through.
That's the whole point. It's like I remember it's like if ever I'm going for like a big lift and need something, just 50 Cent, I Get Money. That's another banger. I've got a whole playlist, like certain songs that, like, depending what mood I'm in is what playlist I select that day. So if I was to give number one right now, it's got to be Badadan. Just gets me going.
Okay, guys, if you're on YouTube, drop your favorite in the comments, because I want to see if you guys listen to stuff that's as mad as that, or if there's some of you that are less psycho in that sense. Because geez, the big thing that we're not taking into context into that conversation is you're going to the gym at 6 a.m. and shoving that into your ears.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool. Then going back, and this third question is from Leo.
Okay.
Leo wants to know, how do you avoid your relationship with the gym becoming a toxic one?
Oh, wow. That's a really hard because I know who's asked this as well. I'm having to really think about this. God, I don't think you necessarily do. And I think it probably is quite a toxic relationship at times, especially mentally when it comes to eating. Like I think the one thing we've probably not touched on this, but I have sort of touched on my Instagram a little bit about, is the body and muscle dysmorphia. Waxes and wanes, but I get really, really bad with it. I think this is also, everything's stemmed in childhood. A lot of it's from the bullying, the fat sort of situation, and I still view myself as that fat kid now. I still view myself as a non-muscular, chubby kid, and I don't know if that'll ever change, no matter how lean I get or whatever. I think to avoid it becoming toxic, you need to be very self-aware of it. You need to keep yourself in check and not get too roped in. I think that is something that I could do improving on. I still find I have quite a difficult relationship with food at times, where I'll be so obsessed with getting my protein in, with not eating too much, and then I get to the point where I don't actually enjoy myself going out. I'll be like, all these extra calories, I'm gonna put on weight, and actually doesn't really matter if you put on a bit of weight. Like, who cares?
It's fine.
It
comes and goes.
Like right now, I've been eating like crap the past few days, and I've got a little bit of timber around there. But like this morning, I went for a lovely fry up, sat there on my own. I bloody enjoyed it. And this is at a point where I'm maybe not so toxic with gym, but there are also times where I am monitoring every single little thing I eat, and it does get quite toxic. Sorry, what was it? So the actual question was, how do you avoid it?
How are you
getting
avoiding
toxic?
it? Well, I mean, you kind of said it. You just need to be more self-aware.
Yeah. I mean, how do I avoid? I don't do a very good job of avoiding it getting toxic. But you know, it's something to work on. I think as long as you're aware that you need to work on it, then that's fine.
That's the good answer. Now, the next sort of thing is, again, self-reflection. So I like to ask my guests, if I was to lock you now in a room with a younger version of yourself, what are 3 quick things you'd tell that person as a piece of advice?
Firstly, is you're not alone as you think you are. I think something I've had throughout my life from a kid, even till now, I literally still feel this way to this day. And it's that I've always had a lot of friends, and I will give everything to my friends. I love them all to bits. But I also feel in a way that it's not reciprocated. I feel like it's not that they don't give me love. It's just my own internal thoughts is that everybody's got their person. I kind of don't have mine. Like, you know, I don't have one friend where it's like, oh, Jason, my best friend, like he's the person I'm gonna call. Whereas, you know, I just always feel on the fringes. So to let yourself know that, you know, don't let those thoughts get to yourself. Like, you aren't alone. Like, don't think that you are just this one-man army. Another big one that, again, still struggle with now is to celebrate. I'm proud of achievements I've done in life, but not really. Like, I just always view it as, right, one thing done, on to the next. Like, even when I graduated from my master's in probably the worst year of my life, it was just, I was like, cool, that's that done. What am I doing for my job? What job am I going to go get now? And I just, at no point have I just sat there and been like, well fucking done. I think that it's quite sad. And I remember I was writing some notes down for this. Actually, I was doing some self-reflection. I was thinking, what do I want to talk about? And when I came up with this point, I just sat there and started crying. It was like such a moment of like, why have I been so horrible to myself like all my life? Why have I not treated myself like I would my best friend? Like if one of my best friends had, you know, gone through a year like that, and I'd be like, mate, you are fucking incredible. You like, well done. And I've not given myself that honor. And lastly, sort of tying in with this is just to, and this is something that it's really difficult to do, and I think a lot of people struggle with this, is to live in the present. Just enjoy whatever it is you're doing right now. Stop thinking a week's time, a month's time. You know, stop dwelling on the past as well. It's not going to do anything. Like, dwelling on the past, you can look at mistakes and you can improve your actions in future, but dwelling on it for dwelling on its sake and just being sad about it, well done, you've made yourself sad. What else have you done? Don't hold grudges either. That's probably another bit. Grudges are the worst thing you can hold. It's like, I saw a great quote, holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's not how it works. You know, you're causing damage to yourself. So I think, yeah, just living a bit more in the present, enjoying everything that goes along. And I'm going to add a fourth in because it kind of sort of wraps up. And it's a cliche quote, but I remember I told a young lad about it at the rugby club the other week, and it was, comparison is a thief of joy. Stop worrying about what your friends are doing. Stop worrying about what people online are doing. Stop worrying about what other people, parents, family members want you to do. Like, stop comparing. You are your own person. You're going to go on your own journey. You can essentially rise and blow up in whatever it is you want to do at any given point in life. You don't need to go on like some long 5-year journey and all of a sudden it all goes right. Like, just go and do your own thing. Do something you love. Do something you enjoy. Do something that actually brings you intrinsic happiness, and don't do stuff for other people and so you can compare and be like, oh, look at me. Doesn't matter. Nobody really cares. Like, you see these great things on social media, end of the day, all you're going to do is double tap it, scroll on. That's it. So, yeah, I gave you 4.
I don't mind that. I think they're all very useful. So the next question is from our previous guest.
Okay.
And you're going to have your opportunity to get your own back on the next question. So the previous guest, it's called Emily.
Yeah.
And she wanted to know, well, what or who is your biggest inspiration in life and why?
I was thinking if I go like really, it's kind of cliche, but like it is true. And probably my mum. Like, what a woman. You know, she's She's climbed the corporate ladder to be incredibly successful with absolutely no qualifications. She's worked her arse off all of her life. She's beaten cancer twice. She's brought me up, which isn't an easy task. And you know, she's held the house together. She is incredible. And you know, my dad's also my inspiration. My whole family is really, but like my mum specifically is the actual embodiment of Superwoman. She is just, I think whenever I tell anybody about my mum and her story, they say the same thing as me. Just, wow, what a woman. God, I get emotional thinking about her as well. You know what, just side note, I'm really glad I've not fully cried today, because whenever I get open, I do sometimes. But and another thing, it's completely fine to cry. I'm not. It's just, as I said, I don't want red. I'm going out after this. I don't want red puffy eyes. But yeah, I think my mum is my greatest inspiration. That's just her ability that no matter what life throws at her, just bounces off, and she keeps cracking. Just what a woman.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really nice is you probably don't. I heard this when I was really young, and I felt like I understood it. But I heard someone say to my mum, "Oh, your kids never appreciate what you do for them until they're old enough to, and then it's too late."
So true.
And it, you know, yeah, I think back to things that my mum and dad have both done for me in their independent ways, and I thought at the time I appreciated it. Jesus, because you just don't have the context of other things in adult life. I think at the time, and you are kind of in your own small world, and yeah, your parents and your family do so much for you, and you can't appreciate it until it is too late to really make the impact on appreciating it. So
yeah,
shout out mum.
Yeah, shout mumsy, shout dad. And I think, you know, you are right, you don't appreciate till you're older. And I think if you are listening right now, wherever you are, as long as you're not in like a tube with no signal, take 5 minutes of your day. Go call your mum, go call your dad, go call your granddad, whoever. Just have a chat.
Yeah, I think I've done that once or twice, and you can hear the smile on the other end of the phone. I think it's definitely worth it. And yeah, just do it. I'm not going to say anything else. Do that.
Yeah.
So your question for the next guest, you have no information really on who they are, but feel free to ask a question.
I was debating. I've been like, because you told me about this before, I've been debating in my head. I think I'm gonna ask. It's a very simple question, but I think it's very hard to answer. And that is, what is happiness to you? And I'm just gonna leave it at that. I don't want to, you know, I'll give a bit of extras. You know, happiness can form in many ways. I think for me, gym, sport, but then, you know, living in the present moment, enjoying those. I remember last week we won a rugby game, won a bus on the way back, a few beers deep, singing Adele. I just sat there to myself and smiled. Just little moments like that. So yeah, what is happiness to you, whether that's a large context or a smaller context, what does it mean?
Amazing. I've got one last question, which I said I wanted to come back to.
Go for it.
So before we wrap up, you've mentioned you're going back to therapy on Monday and you want to start posting again.
Yeah.
Why?
Why for the therapy or why for the posting?
Both. What has drawn you back to doing, getting into the habit of, seeing a therapist and sharing a bit more?
So I think going back to the therapy, I think it's been a little while coming. I know when we went for our gym session back, I think it was some point sort of tail end of last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I said to you at the time, I was like, I've been toying with the idea of it. I think it was just recognizing that I'm not okay, and I haven't been okay for a little while. I've just been masking it very well. So I think it was just, I was like, you know what, this is something I should have done a little while ago. I've got the opportunity to. You know, I've got my own health insurance now through work. So if you've got it, use it. And I think this goes to anybody in a corporate job, wherever you are, if you have access to it, if you don't think you necessarily need it, use it. Because it is so powerful. So yeah, it was just recognizing my own signs that I've not been doing okay, and that if I keep going this way, it could get worse. So just trying to sort of get to it when I can. And in terms of posting, it was actually partly because of this. You know, noting down all the things I want to talk about, my journey, what I've done, and it was actually remembering why I started doing it in the first place. And it was obviously, you know, partly the cathartic model and journaling, but it's to help other people. And I want to get messages out there that, you know, if you're watching this or listening to this right now, and you are struggling, or you know somebody that's struggling, it's something that you can just send them to, let them know you're there, can give them a little tip on ways that they can feel better, or just let them know they're not alone. Because when you are really down in the dump, should we call it, it is a very, very lonely place. You could be surrounded with hundreds of your loved ones and you feel like you're just in a little dark corner on your own. So yeah, it's I will start posting on it again.
Awesome. Well, where can people find it?
So on Instagram, at JP_wellbeing. I'm guessing we tag this, or
I will. So yeah. a lot of the posts that come out from this will be collaborated or tagged. So
yeah.
You'll be able to find him through the Mindsets podcast page, which is at Mindsets_podcast. That's for everything. So you can use that to search on YouTube. You can still search it, I think, on Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere where the podcast is actually streaming, and you'll find it. But yeah, Mindsets_podcast. Drop it a follow. And if you want to get more involved with some of the podcasts, so asking listener questions or even giving advice, if you know people that could come on, I'm always open ears. So yeah, jump over there, follow, like, subscribe, share, give Jason some love. He's done a fantastic job today. And I think one of the things that you said yourself is you don't give yourself any credit for some of the things you've done. The conversation you have had today is astounding. I think there's a lot of people that will listen to this and appreciate, what it takes to actually talk about these things. And, the journey that you have been through is by far one of the hardest journeys I have heard. And I think this is a quote that you actually showed me on your phone. It's talking about your worst days. And I don't know if you want to elaborate that on yourself, but you've got through 100% of your worst days.
Yeah, indeed. And I think that's probably, if I was to give, I think I've given quite a few bits of advice on this.
We'll take one more away with us.
If I would say one more, is that if you are there and you are having a really shit time, and you do, and I know when you're having a shit time, you think, this is it. This is the worst life is. This is, I can't see getting any better. This is just how the rest of my life's going to be. You're wrong. You get through 100% of your worst days, and you may think, oh, do you though? Well, the fact that you're here right now, the fact that I'm here right now is just pure proof that you could be as bad as you think. And as I said before, the sun will set, the sun will rise, it'll be another day, and you'll get through it.
Solid. Well, there you go. Thank you very much for coming on today. And thank you guys very much for listening and being a part of the conversation. We need more conversations like this. That's the premise of this podcast. So please do feel free to keep listening along. We'll obviously track on with your question to the next guest. So there's some continuity there. And yeah, I will see you guys, and I look forward to doing so in the next episode.